Welcome to the EduStar Talks podcast, where we invite some amazing educational rock stars who lives to inspire and loves to encourage. Hosted by an educator, facilitator at the EdTech coach, Sumedha Sodhi. In this show, we will discuss about how educators can amplify student engagement, shake up learning, and can rock the curriculum content with 21st century skills. So if you are looking for ways to rock your class, stay tuned with us and be the never to be forgotten.
Hello everyone, we are back with episode 12 of Edu Rockstar Talks podcast with Sumedha Sodhi, and today our guest is Dr. Tamera Foley. She is a veteran educator who has spent her career advocating for students with disabilities. She is the CEO of Education for All at Illinois, USA. Dr. Foley has co-authored various books, and recently she authored a book named Casey's Big Change: How COVID-19 Has Changed the Way We Learn, that has touched many lives. And today we have the privilege of listening to Dr. Foley about her book and about the way COVID-19 has changed the way we teach and the way we learn. Hello, Dr. Foley. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I am doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great, ma'am. Looking forward to a great conversation today, and thank you so much for accepting our invite to be our guest. Kindly tell us something more about you, ma'am.
Well, I am in northern Illinois and it is very hot here today. It's a little cloudy, but very, very warm. I am a 40-year veteran educator. I retired and now I am an educational consultant. I work with school districts, I work with schools and individuals, and I am also an author of books that deal with mental health and social emotional learning.
Wow, that is so inspiring to know about your work, ma'am. And recent book that you have authored, Casey's Big Change. I have heard a lot about it. Kindly tell us something about Casey and who is she, what is going on in her life, and what inspired you to write this book, Casey's Big Change.
Well, in the midst of COVID, I was seeing children, I was listening to children, and I was hearing from teachers that children were having such a hard time during being at home, learning at home, and not being able to have that connection with their teachers. And I want to say that human connection, the connection where we're in the same room with their peers and with their teachers. And so I felt I was compelled to write a story from the perspective of the child and how the child was feeling. Because I think at the time, everyone, and we are all a part of collective trauma. And so children weren't always given the opportunity to talk about how they felt and what they saw that was going on. So I thought it was very important that it, number one, marks an historical time in the life uh, of the world, and two, that it was an opportunity for children to show and to tell what was going on in their world. So Cassie is a little girl, and she has a wonderful family. She lives with her mother and her father. And Cassie's family, let me talk about her family first, is also going through some challenging times during COVID. Her father has been laid off from work because of COVID-19. So Cassie goes to school and then realizes, thinks that she's only going to have a break, and then finds out that no, she's going to be home much longer. So Cassie misses her friends at school. Cassie has a great relationship with her teacher, and she misses her teacher, who she can always talk to about any issues that she's having. And Cassie also misses her extended family, which are her cousins, because she always sees them on the weekend. And because of this pandemic, she's no longer able to see them. So Cassie is going through a lot of changes, a lot of emotional changes, and just a lot of changes in her environment. So she's feeling very sad. She's feeling very lonely. She's feeling very confused about what's going on, and yet she doesn't really know what to do or how to handle it.
Indeed, it is great to know about how you have integrated the perspective of a child in this book. And Casey, a child who is expressing her feelings and the kind of all the mental trauma she is going through because of the COVID-19, and she is not able to meet her friends, her teachers. And now I would like to know that you have included this question in your title, that how COVID-19 has changed the way we learn. So, what is your perspective on this question, ma'am?
Well, I think when COVID-19 hit, most school districts weren't ready to handle the challenge of every student being able to learn virtually. So, in all school districts around the country, around the world, we have some that are very tech savvy and we have some that are not so tech savvy. So, I think it was very challenging, number one, for the educators who weren't tech savvy and to know what to do. And of course, they only had a little time to prepare. So, I think that was the first challenge. Number two, I think it was a challenge for parents and for families who didn't have the internet. So, in order for them to connect to these children, they had to have the internet. And so, we know that many families don't have access to the internet. And as I've talked to some people globally, I know that in other countries, they may not also have that access. But there is a very disproportionate amount of children in America that don't have internet access in their homes. So that was another challenge. And I think the third challenge was there were students and families that needed access to resources, and those resources weren't available because they didn't have internet access or because the organization, they didn't know how to connect with them if there was no internet. And because we were all confined to being at home, then there was no home visits and other ways that they may have connected. And we also see a group of children who may have been in foster care placement or in other placements who may not have had the resources available to them because our courts were shut down and our whole world was shut down. And so there were a lot of services that just weren't available to children and to families. So I think that's the effect, both educationally. Um, Again, I don't think that we were ready to serve millions of children over the internet. And I also want to say that I don't believe that our networks and our infrastructures were um, ready to withhold and withstand all of this.
Yes, indeed, ma'am. All the challenges that you have mentioned have been faced by all the stakeholders around the world. And these educational disruptions have impacted the student learning in a great way. Can you just share with us how these disruptions, which you have mentioned just now, has impacted the student learning around the world, and what are the aftermaths of this COVID-19 on the student learning?
I think it's impacted in a way that we'll have such a disparity among learning for our children. So, those who have the internet and have families that are there to be able to help them and support them uh, probably will do okay and probably won't have such a learning loss. But for those children who don't have the internet or don't have parents who can be at home with them or somewhere to go that's going to monitor their learning. I think we'll see some definite learning gaps. And to the parents who are uh, healthcare workers and to the parents who have to be on the front line. So, whatever their job is, whether it's at the grocery store or in the doctor's office or wherever they're working, they don't always have the availability to just be off during their child's school hours. So, I think there's definitely going to be disparity in learning for those children or for those people that don't have that extra support network, or for the parents who don't have the opportunity to work at home. So I think we're going to see some disparity definitely in learning around the world, and we're going to have to really do some things differently for our children as they enter back to school, whenever that is, wherever that is.
With such an impact that you have just now talked about, what do you think will be the future of learning and what does it look like to you?
I think we'll be learning differently. I think, first of all, that the school districts, wherever they are around the world, have to first address the child's social and emotional learning, and we have to take care of their mental health before we can really see uh, any growth, any academic growth. Because our children, and again, the entire world has been a part of collective trauma. And so we're all having those mental health experiences, some greater than others. I think that we will always have from now on an availability or option for parents to have their children learn at home or learn on the internet. And I think it'll be wider in districts where maybe it wasn't so great and they didn't have as many options. I think we'll see more options now for children, and for parents. And I think most children will return back to the classroom in the school building, because for children in trauma, that is their safety net. And so I am ecstatic to be able to see that. So children are having those emotional connections, they're having those connections, they're having that sense of belonging, and they're there with their friends and that social interaction that they may not have been getting during the pandemic. So I think we'll see a lot of different ways that children will return to school. And I think it'll be different for every district, no matter where you are, things will look different. And I think educators, as of course, we're always ready to let's test the kids, let's see where they are. But I think we're going to have to give kids at least 6 months or more just to get back acclimated. um, I think we can test their learning because we need a baseline of data to see where they are. But I think we're all going to have to be patient with ourselves and with our children and make sure that uh, we are taking care of their social and emotional health as well as their mental health. So I think school will look different for all of us um, whenever the world gets back to what we can quote unquote normal.
With such a future coming up for the education community, how do you think teachers can create opportunities for students to engage and interact with their peers and with their teachers, and we all can participate in the social emotional learning of each other?
Well, I think one of the ways, we talked about it in Cassie's Big Change, how COVID-19 changed the way we learn, with the teacher um, bringing and sending things to students, being able to have online lunches. I think we'll continue to see those things. I think we'll continue to see counselors and social workers and psychologists working with children and families virtually. And for those who still don't feel comfortable about around being around people, I think we'll have to create more social interactions for those children that are not able to come back in the school building yet, that they'll have to be online, and we'll have to create some different things, whether that's taking kids in a particular room, whether that's making phone calls to them if that's available, whether it's having a time where parents and families can connect to teachers, whether it's over the phone or over Zoom, or even maybe meeting in a place where they might consider safe. um, I think there's just a variety of ways we're going to have to do school. I've seen some school districts that are having some opportunities outside. And so children are learning outside instead of being in the buildings. So things will have to be different based on the needs of the community and the needs of the family. But I think it is possible. I've been seeing it. It is doable. It's a lot of work, but certainly it can happen. I also want to talk just a moment about the educators who also need support during this time, so that their administration, those school districts are reaching out to those teachers, are making them feel comfortable, are making them feel supported, are listening to them. Again, we are all facing collective traumas, and teachers are also a part of that, so that they can feel like they are getting their needs met also. So I think it's a win-win for teachers as well as for the students.
Thank you for sharing these powerful strategies with us. And I think our audience are going to benefit with these opportunities that you have shared just now to engage and interact with the students. Also, I would like to ask ma'am that COVID-19 pandemic has forced us to take a fresh look at our examination system and its shortcoming, along with the changing teacher-student dynamics. What do you think is the need of the hour and the kind of action that we have to take on?
I think one of some of the needs during the pandemic, and certainly for teachers, is just being able to learn the new, whether it's the new technology or how to orchestrate the technology, and to feel comfortable. Using technology, if you're not familiar for a little while, can be okay, but if you have to do it for a longer amount of time, and if you're not comfortable with it, teachers need training, teachers need support. I think depending on the type of testing that we're um, asking teachers to test over Zoom or over, a different online platform, is very difficult unless it's an online test, because we don't know, because if I can't monitor who else is in the room when a child is online. And we can do that if we're all in a building and if we're all together. So I think we're going to have to look at the test scores. And I really think to get the real data, we're going to have to make sure that that data is authentic, that those kids are tested. No one's helping them. It's truly their work, it's truly their learning. And I think that's one difficulty that we face with some online learning, or the way we have it set up now. Now, there are companies and there are different districts that have done this for a long time. And so, of course, we need them to help those who haven't, to make sure that all of the information that is gathered, the way that the information is presented, is with fidelity, so that we can make sure that children are getting the most from the learning experience. And I also want to say that all children do not adapt well to online learning. And so we found it especially difficult for students with disabilities and for those who just need more social interaction. So that's very difficult um, for those children. So while it may work well for some, it's not working well for all. But certainly, we have to make lots of adjustments, and we're going to definitely have to look at doing things in a different manner. I don't believe that things will ever be back the way it was prior. that through this pandemic, hopefully we've learned how to better some things. And then we've also learned where our gaps are and what things we need to change. And I think hopefully it will be changed for the better for our students.
Indeed, ma'am, this is the new normal, and we have to keep on innovating. We have to look for the opportunities, and we have to adapt ourselves into this new normal to take care of the needs of the future generation. Now, coming back to Casey again, one question I missed at that time, I would like to ask you that how did Casey feel after going back to school from the living room to the new educational settings after 1 or 2 years of the lockdown and the pandemic situation? How did she feel at that time?
Well, I'm going to say to you that that's the next book, and that book isn't being released until August 12th, 2021. So just know I don't want to say everything that's going to happen in that book. But I will say that Cassie did go back to school. And because Cassie loves social interaction, she was definitely happy to be back in that school environment.
Oh, that's so great to know about the second part of the book, and I'm eagerly waiting to read that. Hope that will give all my answers.
Yeah. Yes, and the name of that book is Cassie's Big Change, Going from the Living Room to the Classroom. And that will be released August 12th, 2021. The ebook will be released, and people can purchase it on Amazon during that time between 12 and 1 Central Standard Time and 1 and 2 Eastern Standard Time. And that's when we want people to purchase the ebook. But then they can also purchase the paperback book through cassiesbigchange.com website.
Thank you for sharing these details, and we are eagerly waiting for the second part of the book to read on. And that will be also amazing as your part one is. I believe in that. Now, I would like to request you to share one last motivational message for our audience.
One thing I'd like for our audience to know is that we are all in this together. And so we really, as an educator, we have to take care of ourselves and make sure that we're addressing our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health. And we have to make sure that we have those things in place so that we're ready to be the best that we can be for the children that we serve. I also want everyone to know that this is even though it's been a long situation, but it is a temporary situation. And so there is hope that things will get better, things are getting better, and that we will have learned some great lessons from this experience that we can carry on to this generation and to the next generation. So keep your head up, take care of yourselves, and stay positive. And there are various ways to be able to do that. Practice mindfulness, um, practice compassion, uh, meditation, having group supports and talking to each other, reading great books that are out there, listening to wonderful podcasts, including this one, so that they're hearing other people and knowing that they're not alone.
Thank you for that shout out, ma'am, and indeed a very powerful motivational message. Also, I would like to request you to tell our audience that how they can connect with you and learn more about the inspirational work that you are doing through Education for All and writing such great books like Casey's Big Change.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for allowing us this opportunity. They can learn more about Education for All and our services at education, the letter for all now.org, or to learn more about Cassie and what's going on, cassiesbigchange.com, and that's her website. Also, you can connect with us at Support for Children in Trauma on Facebook. You can also connect with author Tamara Foley on Facebook. You can connect with us, Education for All Now, on Instagram, or Tamara Foley on LinkedIn.
Thank you so much for sharing that information, and I think our audience will be glad to connect with you and learn more about your inspirational work. I must say that you are an inspirational leader and a change maker. Thank you for coming to our podcast today, and you are an edu rock star who is making a change and making this earth a great place to live in. You are doing so much to do for the teachers, for the students, for the community, and making learning happen even in the difficult times of COVID 19. And I feel privileged today to have you as my guest. And the way we connected with us, so with the help of our common friend Dr. Doreen, a special thanks to her also for connecting us and talking about such a great issue, that how COVID-19 has changed the way we learn. It's indeed inspirational and a great learning conversation for me also. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much for having me, for your invitation. I'm honored to be sharing. A part of Education for All Now is reaching out and having that global perspective. And so today is just one opportunity that you made happen. So thank you so much. And if any of your school districts or anybody needs to connect to order the book in bulk, please have them reach out to me and let me know. But thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this podcast. I certainly appreciate it. And again, I feel honored to have been chosen.
You have just listened to the Edu Rockstar Talks podcast with your host Sumedha Sodhi. Subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. Head over to subscribe, rate, and leave a review for us. It is very much appreciated. Do not forget to join us next week for another exciting episode. Thank you for listening to us, and be the never to be forgotten.